For the EFD, Marta.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Trichet, we are about to have another bank stress test. When the Committee of European Banking Supervisors tested the banks last year, they found 7 out of 91 banks failed the test, but the Irish banks that passed the test subsequently had to be recapitalised. This undermined the credibility of the tests. I realise that the new tests are being carried out under the supervision of the European Banking Authority. But are you satisfied that it is now realistic enough to discover which banks are not sufficiently capitalised? Also, will the test realistically measure a Greek default and an Irish and Portuguese one? Can you also tell us what the ECB exposure to Greece is? How much green paper is the ECB holding? Have you calculated what different degrees of Greek default will mean to the ECB in these circumstances? How big a loss can the ECB absorb before you have to go back to member states and ask for more capital? Finally, as a prudent banker that you are, what would you say to a client who came to you and told you he's unable to pay his bills next month? If he said he was completely broke and was down to his last ready cash, and when the mortgage was due next month he couldn't pay it, would you tell him to go and borrow more money and increase his debt? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. As you said, the EBA is responsible for the stress test, and I have confidence that these stress tests are run in the most professional fashion possible. We will, of course, see when the stress tests are published, what are the results. I don't want to anticipate in the work which is being done by the EBA and by all national supervisors, because it's a work which, as you know, is done within the framework of this constellation of national supervisors. A second remark I would like to make is that, and it goes also with your second question, we are not the United States of America. We do not have a single treasury, a single signature, a single federal government. We have 27 governments, and we have 27 signatures and 27 taxpayers. That's the institutional framework of Europe. At the same time, we want to have, and we made enormous progress, a single market at the level of the 27, and as you know, the stress tests are pursued at the level of the 27. The fact is that there is a high level of correlation between the signature of the sovereign and the signature of the banks in any country in the world. And if there are problems with the signature of a sovereign, it has consequences for the signature of the banks, because immediately the backstops that are so decisive at the level of, seen from the eyes of all observers, investors and savers, which are very important for the potential solidity of the banks, are of course more or less credible or more or less put into question depending on the creditworthiness and the solidity of the sovereign signature. So all this is clear, and that's the reason why we have always to remember in which constellation of, I would say, sovereign decisions we are in Europe. Single market with a single currency uniting 331 million people inside the 500 million, and nevertheless a constellation of governments and of parliaments. Now, I would only say that as ECB, European Central Bank, we are issuing the currency for 17 countries, not only a fraction of the 17, for the 17 countries. That is what the treaty is calling upon us. And we have a collateral framework that we apply. It is public. Everybody can know, because it's fully public, what is our collateral framework. We have, I have to say, attached a great price to be sure that it was optimized, taking into account the situation. As you know also, part of our concept is to strictly separate what we call the standard measures, namely the interest rates measures that we are taking to deliver price stability, and the non-standard measures that we take to be sure that we are coping with abnormal functioning of some of the markets. We are still, of course, living in the fallout of the worst crisis at a global level since World War II, which could have been the worst crisis since World War I, so something which is extremely grave. And I refer to what we had said last time. We had said that we were in a state of strong vigilance, which means something for the interest rates standard measures. We said at the same time that we would maintain for the third quarter of this year the fixed rate full allotment refinancing on a 3-month basis, which shows that the separation principle is applied strictly. We detach the standard measures from the non-standard possible measures. And I have to say that our track record, again, is that we deliver price stability in line with our definition over time. We'll continue to do that. It is something which is, for us, absolutely fundamental. It's the treaty. It is what our people are calling upon us. And it is essential for the stability and confidence in the euro area as a whole, in the perspective of preserving prosperity in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you.